Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy Head podcast. Sometimes I like to say that really slow because I mix my words up, as you know. My name is Paul, I'm your host, and this morning I'm joined by Nicky. Good morning, Nicky. How are you doing?
Good morning. Yeah, very well, thank you. The sun's shining.
There was a pause there. Now, listen, we've got to be really careful, listeners and viewers, because as usual, before I hit the record button, we had a bit of a pre chat, and Nicky said three woo woo things almost in a row. So this could go anywhere today. So be prepared. If you're not into woo woo, I'd suggest you go make a cup of coffee or do something else. So, what we were talking about, the universe, the ghost patrol. We'll come on to that later on, and just all things happy, clappy. And the wind, yeah, the sun is not shining here. I'm not happy. Yesterday was gorgeous. It was glorious. Went out for a long walk, really blue sky, really warm. And it's like just grey and that kind of clammy. There's thunderstorms forecast for late tomorrow, so we shall see.
Sorry, we haven't got the sunshine. Maybe we've just nicked it. I'll enjoy it for a few hours and then I'll send it back.
And that'd be really kind if you wouldn't mind. See, this is just going to go woo woo, do 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 do. Who remembers the Twilight Zone? Can never really sing the theme tune. Anyway, so listen, welcome to the show. You are a book writing author kind of person, and you don't dive anymore, but you were a diver, weren't you?
Yeah, technically I still could dive. We just haven't, and obviously who's been diving in sunnier climes the last 15 months, right? But yeah, when I met my second husband, sounds very posh, doesn't it? But when I met Phil, he was just learning to dive, and before that, I was really the sort of stay at home, play it safe kind of person. And we started indoor rock climbing. That was kind of one adventurous thing. And then he said, I'm learning to dive. And I went along to the first session and the trainer said, well, why, do you dive? And I said, no. He said, do you want to? And the rest is history. I ended up as, being qualified to dive to 50 meters and an assistant instructor and everything else. So I got right into it.
Were you Paddy or BASC? I
Yeah,
BBC.
BSAC.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did a first course with Paddy and then crossed over to the dark side and did the rest with Bizak.
Yeah, I actually learned to dive right but didn't qualify. It's really bizarre. We'd gone out to the lake to do the first kind of outdoor dive, and I don't know what happened. I think I must have had too much weight on. No comments, you lot. And so we went in and we went down, and we kind of like doing the mask off and the mask on. Wax on, wax off, and that went okay. But then the instructor said like kind of go to the surface, and I couldn't get to the surface. my my poor tank was going, and he just couldn't go. This is what tanks do, by the way, for those that don't dive, yeah. And it was really struggling, and everybody else was like floating gently and serenely to the top, and they were looking down at me, and I'm going, what the hell's happening? Am I going to be stuck here forever? So in the end, I had to take everything off and take
Right.
the weight belt off. And of course, as soon as I took the weight belt off, I almost like flew off. So I had to kind of grab the weight belt on, and it was a real palaver. And in the end, I didn't finish it. And because they didn't do a second lake dive thing, that was the end of my sort of diving career as such. But I've got to admit, I much prefer free diving because with free diving, you just take your clothes off, put some flippers on, and go in the water. It's great.
Much less complicated, isn't it? No, I was definitely one of those cold water, dry suit, all the kit, twin cylinders. I remember someone saying to me, God, you're really quite a techie, aren't you? And I was like, hooray. Yeah, so we used to dive around all the south coast, lots of Plymouth and Lundy, the Scilly Isles, all that sort of stuff. So when you did a kind of warm water dive, you almost felt like you were cheating because, like you say, just in a shorty, it was just so easy.
Yeah, it's really funny. Diving is a very tech thing because when I was learning to dive, obviously I got all the magazines and stuff, and every other page was about some massive thing you put on your wrist that could kind of like make your breakfast and tell you the time and what the weather was in Tahiti and all kinds of things. And for those that are listening, for some bizarre reason, I'm looking at my wrist now, which has nothing on it, but it's just the way it goes. And and then yeah, twin tanks and single tanks and different kinds of wetsuits and really expensive. I mean, it's like you could sell your house, take the money from that, spend it on gear, and still buy more stuff.
Yeah, and then there's other people that are in a dry suit that it looks like their granny knitted, you know, and so you've got the whole end of the spectrum. You know, you can sort of beg, steal, and borrow, and do it that way, but it does become a kind of a thing, doesn't it? That you see someone else with something shiny, and you want that shiny thing, so you've always got to kind of balance it with your budget. But yeah, at one point our garage looked like a dive shop with all the different kit in it, because Phil was a rebreather diver. So again, a whole other level of tech that at that point I was just like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do
A
that.
rebreather diver, that's with the kind of fully enclosed suit which redoes the air and cleans it so you can reuse it so you can go deeper for longer. Is that what a rebreather is?
Yeah, yeah, they call it closed circuit. So the rebreather effectively becomes your lungs. You know, you become one with it, and you have to kind
Woo
of
woo
check all
again.
the
You see that?
levels.
Do you see that? Woo woo again. You become one with it.
That you do. But yeah, that's, and I just didn't want to. And like you say, he was then diving to sort of 70 meters for 2 hours at a time. But you'd spend 20 minutes on the bottom and then take like an hour and a half coming up. And I haven't got the patience for that, so I definitely didn't take that step.
Yeah, that was the one thing that did put me off about diving was you got to spend, so little time kind of on the bottom, but so much time to kind of get to the top so you don't get the bends and all that. But we're going to talk about that in a second because didn't that happen to you kind of almost?
Yeah, I did get the bends. So yeah, do you want me to
So,
set the scene?
so yeah, so see, once upon a time,
Once upon a time in a land far, far away. Yeah, so 2010, in the April 2010, I started a new business venture, and it was a holistic centre and coffee shop. So it was what I'd been, again, going a bit woo, but it was kind of my dream business. I'd been thinking about doing this. My background is not woo, is working in a bank, training to be an accountant, becoming company accountant for a security company, and then through my own health, I found holistic therapies and went, why is nobody talking about this? And so retrained. You know, you can imagine my parents, I'm not going to be an accountant anymore, I'm going to be a reflexologist, dad. You know, that went down well. The whole job for life thing, they couldn't quite get that at all. And so, yeah, started my own holistic therapy business, but always wanted like a place that people could come and have a chat. And so coffee shops, you know, the Costas and the Starbucks weren't really that much of a thing in 2010. They were sort of just starting. Um, and so, yeah, set up this lovely space, but decided that I was going to work really hard for 6 months on my own with just my daughter's helping part time at the weekends. And then I would get some help. Because how many times do we go, oh, yeah, I can't afford staff yet, but I'll just, I'll just work myself and then you know, uh, I'll be happy when kind of thing. So yeah, spent the first 12 weeks working 80 to 100 hours. uh, my usual day would start off at 4 o'clock in the morning with that kind of, did I turn the coffee machine off, or did I order the cakes, or did I tell so and so, so I'd like jump awake at 4 o'clock, be in the coffee shop way before anyone else, doing all sorts of hygiene stuff. um, and then I'd finish, we'd sometimes do evening events, I'd get home about 10. um, my husband would have cooked whatever, he loves chilies, curries, all that sort of stuff, and I'd just eat them cold because I was just so knackered. I couldn't, it was just sustenance, food was fodder, which is, he was horrified the next morning. He's like, did you find that, chili, whatever? Yeah, you ate it cold, didn't you? No. But of course, I can't lie for toffee. So he knew instantly. I just spooned it. Um, and yeah, I would get to bed about midnight after doing some marketing and stuff. And that was my fun new business. And so very quickly I went from this, having this vision and it all happening really seamlessly and easily, to just graft and being scared of this, what I'd created, because the accountant in me was like, well, you've got to earn £2,000 before you can even open the door. So I was very much in that sort of fear-based stage. And Phil said to me, look, you've been really boring, you've just been working, like, why don't we go diving for a weekend? We were part of Clifton Sub Aqua Club, and they were doing this sort of long weekend on Lundy. And we said, oh yeah, let's go. And 4 o'clock in the morning before the ferry, I'm writing the company newsletter. Now, did I really need to do that before a long weekend? Like, obviously not. But in my kind of stressed state, and he's rattling the keys going, we will miss the ferry, they will go without us. And I'm like, I have to do this. And so we got to Lundy, set up a tent, because of course you camp, you had to make it hard on yourself. We camped top of Lundy, near the pub, obviously. And yeah, we did day one diving. And like you said about your dive with the weight, I call it a faffy dive. Like, my mask was leaking, my dry suit was quite tight because I ran a coffee shop and had eaten quite a lot of the cake.
Never said a word.
I don't know, they seem to shrink over the winter, these dry suits. I don't know what happens. And yeah, I just couldn't get comfortable. I couldn't, like you say, settle in the water. I kept kind of going up and down and swearing at myself. And yeah, we just did a 15-meter dive. So it wasn't a deep, I'm used to 50 meters. It wasn't a deep, challenging dive. There was a bit of a current that we were sort of swimming against at some points. But apart from that, it was okay. And we had a break at lunchtime. And then we did the second dive. And before I went in the water, as the boat came around the corner to pick us up, this little voice in my head went, oh, I don't want to dive. And I just thought, don't be lazy, come on, let's do this. You've paid to be on holiday. It's all about the dive kind of thing. And so we went and we did a second dive. And again, it was just faffy. I was kind of trying to swim against the current for a while. And again, my mask was still leaking. And hang on, you can see I've got a lot of hair. So I think I just like got it caught and couldn't, when you're under the water, you can't kind of see, can you, to get shot of that. And yeah, that afternoon we went back up to the campsite, and they call it Cardiac Hill because it's really steep. And about halfway up, I just lost my breath. I just could not, I wasn't just puffing and wheezing, like I couldn't breathe. And I grabbed onto Phil's sort of coat cuff and like, whoa, I don't know what to do. And then I managed to get my breath back sort of halfway up. And I just said to him, I need to go to the gym. I'm really unfit, So again, beating myself up about being busy. And it was 4 o'clock the next morning that I was really seriously unwell. Couldn't breathe. Every time I bent forward, I just lost my breath completely. This is getting to be a long story, isn't it? Do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, go for it. We haven't got to the juicy bit yet, so you've got to keep going.
So again, when I talk about being looked after, so that weekend we were diving there's a GP in our club. She happened to be on that same dive. I'd been in the club 7 years. We'd never dived in the same group until that weekend. And she said, I need to ring DDRC, like the Diver Diseases Research Centre. I need to get some advice. And I said, oh, am I going to be rescued by a helicopter? And she said, no, I think you've punctured your lung. And at that point, I was like, oh, shit, I might actually be, I kept saying, I've just pulled a muscle. I'll be all right in a minute. But she rang DDRC and they said that I needed to get off the island. I needed to go to Barnstable Hospital, like the nearest hospital. But because I was having breathing problems, we had the club ribs, but they were really like short, sort of the bouncy chuck you out kind of rib. And it was a 20-mile journey back to the mainland. And Helen sort of said, I don't think you're well enough to make that journey. But she said, we need to get you off the island. And at that point, the Coast Guard arrived around the corner. And we hadn't called them or anything, but that Lundy's a no-take zone. So apparently they were just patrolling. Like you said, sometimes that, they just go out for a ride around. And they saw people, so they decided to pull into the jetty and say hello. And Helen went down to talk to them, and I didn't realise I was sort of organising. Phil, my husband, was like, well, shall I come with you? And I said, well, why would you ruin your dive weekends? I'll be fine. And again, I'll be fine. Like, even now, as I say it, I'm thinking, what were you thinking? But at the time, I just didn't want to make a fuss. So he stayed on Lundy. The Coast Guard whisked me off. Apparently Helen had said, she's really sick, she doesn't know it yet, just get her to hospital really quick and don't let her get a taxi to hospital. Because I was like, oh, you don't want to call an ambulance? I'll just get a taxi. She's like, no, you stay under medical care, promise. Yeah, we whisked off. Phil's waving and I'm thinking, oh, I wish I'd asked him to come with me. And he stood on the jetty saying to his mate, I should have insisted, like, why am I here? Because there's no signal, there's no phone signal on Lundy. So he couldn't, I couldn't let him know how I was doing. And yeah, but halfway across the channel, and seeing like dolphins and thinking, oh, this is really nice. And why are they going so fast? And then halfway across the channel, my arm just, I was hanging onto the seat in front of me because they were like belting. And my arm dropped off the seat and I kind of picked it up and hung on again. And then it dropped again. And then all the fizzing started, which if anyone knows about the bends, they say it feels like lemonade. It's like, it's the nitrogen trying to get out of your body and getting stuck around your elbow and your shoulder and all your joints. And when it fizzed, I was like, oh no, I've got a bend in my arm. Damn it. I didn't say damn it, being polite. But and then over the course of the next sort of 10 minutes, everything just became like an old photograph. I just felt really, really old. Couldn't really see properly. And by the time we got to the Coast Guard at Barnstable, they literally had to like help me up the steps. And I was just like this 90-year-old lady because I just couldn't. And I just thought, I'm not getting enough oxygen. Something's going. This muscle I've pulled. And when the Coast Guard said, "Well, what's your name?" I didn't know. And then after what felt like forever, my name came to me. And, like, where have you dived? Where have you been? What depth did you do? All these things, as a diver, you can just rattle off, ad infinitum. But I couldn't remember. And I just really struggled and I was just really confused. And looking back now, like at the time it was diagnosed with, I had a muscular bend in my lungs, a skeletal bend in my shoulder, and a cerebral bend in the brain. But 9 months later, they realised that I was actually having a stroke at that point. So, yeah, 9 months later, it was a big shock when someone said the word, because the word stroke, it's just like stroke, cancer, heart attack, all these things just sound big and scary.
Why did it take 9 months to figure it out?
Because I had 14 hours of recompression therapy because they took me to Barnstable Hospital, checked I didn't have a punctured lung, that was fine. They then realised it was the bends, so ambulance down to Plymouth with oxygen all the way. And then 14 hours of recompression therapy after over kind of 3 days. And a week later I said, but I still can't feel my leg and I still can't do anything with my arm. Like, I think I need more therapy. And they said, no, that's how you are. A bend will just naturally go away. After 6 months, you'll just recover. So I didn't. But no one checked for a stroke at the time. And I just thought I had the bends, so I didn't bother going anywhere. And then obviously it took a while to get a referral to the hospital. And when I saw the neurologist, they did the pinprick thing where, can you feel this? Is this sharp or dull? And actually I had no feeling down my whole left side. Like, my face was numb, but my hand was numb. So I was washing my face with a numb hand on a numb face and I hadn't noticed. And do you check whether you can feel whether you've got sensation in your side on a daily basis?
I do every day. I mean, it's not. Anyway, just for those who don't know, can you go through what recompression therapy is, what it looks like?
Yeah, so it's as if you are having a dive. So they compress you as if you were going down to.
They put you in a box or something, yeah?
Yeah, it's like they're the I'm not technical, but the little mini submarine things when they were doing like deep sea, North Sea diving, whatever. People would live in these little compressed chambers. So they compress it as if you're at 60 feet. So as if you were descending the ocean to 60 feet, they, compress the air, and you have a nurse in with you. So you go on a dive together. But you've also got one of these plastic sort of space age helmet things that is giving you 100% oxygen at the time. So they compress you, and then they recompress you, and then they decompress you. So gradually they decrease the pressure as if you were coming back to the surface, but just really, really slowly. So I think it was about 4 hours at a time. And they laughed because they said no one had ever slept in the chamber, but I did, because it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I used my hair as a pillow in this like plastic thing and led down, and off I went. And the nurse said, yeah, I've never had anyone sleep in one of these. And I joke I can sleep on a washing line, and I think I proved the point that day.
Yeah, I had a friend who was a North Sea diver, and he lived basically in what did he describe it as? A very big tube of toothpaste most of his life. Yeah, because
Yeah,
basically
that would,
they're at the bottom of this rig, and they go out and do all the work and stuff. Instead of going up and down, they
yeah,
basically
they go
go
back in
into
and
this. Like if you ever watch any sort of sci-fi movies and they're underwater and they kind of come up into this, like it looks like a room, but it's a very, very, very
yeah,
small room, and the water's kind of just sitting there. And you go, how the hell is the water not coming in and filling this room up? Because it's under pressure, and they'd
yeah.
live. And the one question I always wanted to ask him, but I daren't, was if you go to the loo and you're sitting on the loo and you forget that you're in this thing, what happens if you push the plug out before you got up? Yeah. So moving as swiftly on. So you went through this recompression therapy. You still didn't feel 100%, but because life gets in the way and you're back in your coffee shop and everything, it was only until you went for checks that they realised that you'd
Yeah.
had the stroke. So then what?
Yeah, so basically, I took 2 weeks off while I was having all the therapy and stuff and resting. And again, the recompression therapy actually messes with your eyesight, so you become really short-sighted, temporarily. But I couldn't have, worked or anything. And then yeah, went to start work 2 weeks later. Got in my car to drive to work and kept stalling it because I didn't realize I didn't have the sensation in my leg. I thought I was, finding bite point on the clutch, and I wasn't. So I kangarooed up and down the road, reparked the car, went in and said to my daughter, you're going to have to carry on. I can't actually drive my car. Um, so at that point, again, universe, she'd been made redundant from a previous job. And so I said, well, could you just step in as my manager? So she took over the running of the shop full time until I got back. And I went to my parents and said, can you lend me some money? Because I need an automatic car because I can't, I can't not get to work. So I got an automatic car, carried on my life thinking, well, in 6 months' time, I'm just going to feel better. So I just need to ride this. So again, I'm fine. Was back in work. People knew I'd had the bends, but they were like, oh, thank goodness you're all right. Yeah, yeah, I'm fine. Carried on. But I couldn't, when I was pouring doing the coffee machine, I kept burning my finger because I had no sensation in this hand at all. I couldn't lift a box or lift anything because I couldn't use this arm. But I just used to kind of, oh, I don't know. I was just so I just was trying to find my way around everything. And then, yeah, went to the neurologist and he said, you've had a stroke. And he said, you'll never dive again. And how you are in 18 months is how you'll be forever. And that was my sentence. And I looked over and my mum was crying. And that's when it's serious, isn't it? When and I went back home and the next morning I was trying to have a shower and I just dropped the metal shower head in a kind of metal bath and just went downstairs and sat in the dark and rang my mum and said, can you come over? And we sat in the dark together for 3 days and she made a lot of tea and I didn't really say very much. And when my husband came home that night, like I'm just so positive, I'm all about the positivity, have naturally been. I'm always a naturally kind of upbeat person. And he came in that night and saw me sat in the dark. He was like, you okay? I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm done. What do you mean you're done? Done. And I've spoken to so many people since that have had some kind of challenge, and they said there's a point where you just you give up, and that was my point. And I was like, I need to close the shop. I can't, I'm done. I can't do this. But after I'm stubborn. I'm so stubborn. I've always been a stubborn teenager and everything else, and my parents, bless them, they were always like, oh, you're just so stubborn. And after 3 days, I thought, is this really it? Like, I set up this business. This was my dream. I've got A levels in anatomy and physiology. I know holistic therapy and things like Reiki and reflexology. I know they work. I know the body renews every cell in your body within 7 years. So how can this be it forever? Like, I'm not going to have the same cells in my body in 7 years' time. So that's ridiculous. And I love diving, so I'm bloody well going to do it again. And Phil came in the door 3 days later, and I went, I'm going to dive again. He went, marvelous. Okay, how'd you do that? No idea. But I've been following a guy called Dr. David Hamilton, who wrote a book about how your mind can heal your body. And I read that book cover to cover, and it became my Bible. And he talks about, visualizing, almost sending a repair team into your body. So I imagined my arm like remapping itself, and like almost like like Spider-Man has um, the web coming out of the end of his fingers. I sort of saw a web kind of all my nerves like knitting together again, and I visualized like what it'd be like diving, because I was having lots of nightmares about being trapped in the weed underwater and all this sort of scary stuff. And so I sort of positively thought of diving again and what it would feel like. And I started using my left hand to lift up mugs of tea and all the rest of it. No matter if it hurt or it was a bit shaky, I was making myself kind of use it. I hired a personal trainer who was an ex-Marine. That was the worst decision of my life. Never do that, because they make you carry on even if you've thrown up.
Oh
Apparently,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
know that.
Marines do that. It's like die. That's the only excuse you've got to stop. You
Yeah,
dead?
it's like, I'm gonna.
You dead? Are you sure you're dead? Okay, fine. You can stop then.
In his training in the gym, I was like, I'm going to throw up. He's like, there's the bucket. Let him carry on. Um, but I had to laugh about it, because my left brain, right brain was just screwed basically, and I'd go to try and do a step aerobics thing and I'd just fall over. Like, it was quite comical. And actually touching your right foot behind you with your left arm, I just couldn't do that for ages. So it was very much my whole body was just trying to remap and work out where it was. Um, and within the first year, I started to get a lot stronger and a lot better. And 3 years later, 3 years from the day of the dive almost, I got my medical back to say that I was fit to dive.
Wow, that is incredible. Because when
So
a doctor usually says you can never dive again, that is it. No other doctor's going to sign off on that.
yeah, so I sort of did that.
And for
Because
those that are not watching, she just raised her hand and made a really, really rude gesture. Really rude gesture.
yeah. But what it also did for me though, I sold the business 2.5 years later for a profit, and it got me to realise that you can have all the business ideas in the world, but if your health goes, you are, without your health, you're nothing. Without your mental health and your physical health, that has to come first. And so, Discover Your Bounce, the business that we do now, is born out of me going to networking groups, and they were like, "Oh, you look really bouncy. You look like Tigger." And I said, "Yeah, I've got my bounce back." And then one night, I just thought, "Discover your bounce," because we all, talking to people now, how many people bounce back from something, whether it's illness, divorce, a car accident, all these things. We all have these stories, and actually, if you can work out how to bounce back, you don't have to be afraid of doing anything, because there's a formula that you can use. So it was a big old life lesson, and I'm 51 now and so much more healthy than when the accident happened when I was 40. So
Bizarre that we have to, or not we have to, but many, many people to kind of really find their joy in life, their thing, have to go through something really, really bad, something really traumatic before they realize that, hang on, pre thing wasn't me, post thing is me.
yeah, and people say, don't they, "Oh, I wish I'd done that thing, I wish I'd done it years ago." But we tell ourselves, that, like you say, the job for life, or that we have to work really hard. We're today, we've got 2 days planning down in Seaton, in a mobile home by the sea. Why do you have to do your business planning in a boardroom between the hours of 9 and 5? I think the last sort of 15, 16 months has actually taught us that there's loads of different ways to do what we want to do. But again, if you don't change your thinking, then you're not going to change what you're doing, are you?
Okay, so look, we've sold the coffee shop holistic thing for a profit. You didn't go straight into your new thing immediately, or did you? Or was there a kind
No,
of a
so
lapse of thinking period? How did you get from where you were to kind of where you are now?
yeah, so I sold the business, and it's called Cafe Rosa over in Whitchurch in Bristol. So there's a lovely lady called Rosa that took over the coffee shop element. The therapists that were working in there have gone there different, some have got different therapy centres, or so that's kind of still in existence. But I realised that I I wanted a safe place for people to be, but actually you can be anywhere. It's the kind of company you're with that kind of creates that atmosphere. So, um, but for a while I got a smaller, like just a therapy room in a little place locally, and I was just doing the holistic treatments. And I've always read like tarot cards, oracle cards, those kind of things as a kind of inspirational tool. So I don't think I can tell you what your future is going to be, because you've got free will and you can decide. Ah, the fool. Nice one. There we go. Um, so yeah, I've always read, before that business, I'd done, tarot readings. I read tarot at the Guardian recruitment fair. Brilliant. I'd done all sorts of different things. But when I got the therapy centre, what I realised was that if someone has a therapy, someone comes in for a reflexology session or a Reiki session or whatever, they come in really stressed. You do the treatment, they feel better. But I was always giving people aftercare, like talking about their circumstances and maybe they should get more sleep, or, try and get rid of the stress. But they would always go back to what they were doing, get busy and need another treatment. And there wasn't that home care. And bearing in mind, this was like 2012 by this point. So holistic therapies and law of attraction and manifesting and all these, they just weren't really sort of talked about that much. It was more you'd go to a holistic fair or something and there'd be all these woo-woo things going on. It was all very secretive. But I also found with the reading, you gave someone a reading and you said, this is what's possible. And they go, oh no, I couldn't do that. And there was this sort of mindset block. And I remember getting a bit frustrated in the sort of leading up to the Christmas doing therapies and thinking, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way of working with people. And I just didn't know what that was. And then roll forward the early part of the following year, my mother-in-law she'd been ill for a while. She had cancer, but she died in the sort of early spring. And she'd said to me, don't spend all your life dieting. Don't spend all your life worrying about what other people think. And don't spend all your life doing what you're told. And at the funeral, I didn't realize she'd read my early books. I'd given her 3 books and I didn't think she'd read them. And her best friend said, oh, she loved your books. She'd read them cover to cover. She was always talking about how proud she was of you. And I still get goosebumps, And so I kind of, I don't know, that my thinking before Christmas and her passing, one night I woke up and thought, it's discover your bounce. I discovered my bounce. And actually that's what people need. It's bounce, it's energy, it's joie de vivre, it's mojo, whatever you want to call it. Why do some people really struggle and, have all these illnesses and not really seem to get businesses off the ground? And some people seem to, they seem to fly, overnight success after 20 years hard work, admittedly, but some people seem to fly. And I think it is that energy and that mindset, it's that thing. So I wrote the Bounce program, which was just a 6-part program, which we still mentor on today. And that was the start of the Discover Your Bounce business.
And what is the Discover Your Bounce business? How do you help people today?
So the mentoring program is basically the first 3 weeks you look at mind, body, spirit, and get people to, think about their mental health, maybe, mindfulness, mantras, kind of boosting their sort of mental health, physical health, the things, drinking plenty of water, eating good food, moving, getting some exercise. I've got one of these bits. It is herbal, but there's no gin in there, I promise. And then, spirit, happiness, kind of trusting your own intuition. We've all got it, but we just maybe are so busy. And again, with the physical stuff, most people know how to look after themselves. They're just so busy and stressed that that's the bottom of the list, isn't it? You never get to it. And then the second half of the program is looking at your business, looking at your home, a bit of decluttering, for example, and then looking at vision. What does good look like? So that's the Bounce program. I did that solely for about 5 years, and then Sharon, my now business partner, we'd met on a retreat together, and then she'd become an author in one of my early The Missing Piece in Bouncing Back. It was through another publisher. She and I together put a corporate wellbeing program called the Engage program together, which is a series of 12 lunch and learns for businesses, and we've worked with, I think, over 3,000 employees since. And then the publishing that I'd been doing with other people, we brought in and launched Discover Your Bounce Publishing, and I wrote Rescued by the Coast Guard through our publishing company. So, now we've got 3 businesses, 3 brands, and I'm less stressed than I've ever been. So something must have worked.
So 3 businesses and you're less stressed than when you had 1 business. How do
Yeah,
you do it?
because I
How do you
think,
do it?
well, I think everyone needs a Sharon, definitely, because, it's great to have someone that checks in with you and goes, hang on a minute, why are you sending me that email at 9 o'clock at night? Or why did you do that on a Sunday? And, we kind of keep an eye out for each other. Um, I think we've got a really clear plan because, again, when you're not panicked, you can, create a plan and stick to it. I was very, if I, left to my own devices, I'm a bit of a shiny object. Oh, should we go and do that? Um, so we kind of have a plan, and also we have people working with us. We've got, we call them team bounce, so we've got proofreaders and editors, we've got a lovely graphic designer, we've got people who sort of cheerlead, we've got a community, Discover Your Bounce community on Facebook, where we post every day. I do lives a couple of times a week. um yeah, it's more, it's about community, but also I like to make a difference to other people's lives. But what I've realized is you need to make a difference to your own first. And that was the old cliche about putting your oxygen mask on first. Because the better I feel, the more people I can help. And then the better I feel. So, I used to think that I'm an extrovert and I could just be in front of people all day 24/7. And actually I can't. I need my own downtime and quiet time, and, you know, sat on a beach, or we go indoor skydiving now. That's brilliant. So it's like diving, but you don't have to, don't have to put the kit on.
Hang on, indoor skydiving. Hang on, is that one of those tube things where they've got a massive wind turbine in the bottom and you kind of go in there and it lifts you up?
Yes, that's the one. So we go down to Basingstoke. So basically, because Phil and I used to go away for diving weekends. Now we have what we call date day. So we get down to Basingstoke, stop for a coffee and a whatever. Um, Go and do a couple of 10-minute sessions in the tunnel. And it sounds really easy, doesn't it? 10 minutes, but you've got 100-mile-an-hour winds and your arms are out like this. So you always get these kind of aching, aching shoulders the next day. Um, but we've learned to, fly face down, then we've learned to fly face up, and then we've learned to do these sort of transitions in the tunnel. So and kind of bounce from the bottom to the top. And it's just challenging your brain and challenging your body to do something different, isn't it? But
Wow. So what's next? I mean, we've done diving. We're now flying indoors. We're now running three businesses. What's next on the horizon for you, Nikki?
uh, I think, yeah, like the indoor skydiving, and I went back to ballet a couple of years ago. I used to do ballet up until the age of 16, 5 days a week, ballet, tap, modern, jazz, all the kind of dance training. I did my sort of classical ballet training, and then discovered boys, got married, it all just stopped. And a couple of years ago, there was a class on at my local gym, and I thought, I wonder, and actually I just love it. Um, so yeah, I do ballet and the indoor skydiving. I've become a bit of an exercise sort of fitty. I found through menopause that getting sweaty stopped hot flushes. Like, work that one out. Total oxymoron, but
Yeah, absolutely.
it does. Um, yeah, and I think I love what the business does. I love what we're doing. We still write books. I still do all the public speaking, sort of keynote speaking as part of the business. But I'm a nan now. I've got 3 grandchildren, and family's always been a massive part. But I used to think that I had to sacrifice time with family to do business, and we've kind of worked out that I don't. We can so it's a balancing act. But I think, yeah, just more of the same, more opportunities, more memory making, more appreciation. Just, yeah. I remember I think it was last year, because I turned 50, and I remember, yeah, because I had my 80s fancy dress birthday party in the February before lockdown, and everyone, all my friends and family came, and we had this great big hurrah just before, like, the world went crazy. And I remember thinking, if today was my final day on earth, if something happened today, then actually could I look back and think that I've, done everything I wanted to do? And I'm like, yeah, actually, yes, I want another 50 or plus years of creating mischief and, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I'm really content where I am. And I think we always, even when you get what you were aiming for, sometimes we're like, right, what's next? and actually sitting and appreciating them and going, yeah, I really like this. you know, so yeah, more of the same, please.
Wow. So, Nikki, where can people reach you? How can people
So,
reach
as I
you?
say, we've got the community on Facebook. So, Discover Your Bounce Community. If you search for that, you'll find us. Discoveryourbounce.com is the website, and you can see about the personal development, the corporate wellbeing, and the publishing. It's basically like on the homepage, you sort of pick. And we also have a social passion project where the royalties from the Bounce Back Journey books that we publish fund mental health awareness projects. So we've been working in construction. We're talking to local kind of suicide prevention um, charity. So again, it's just a nice way to give back, isn't it? But yeah, discoverybounce.com is where you'll find everything. Nicky Marshall on LinkedIn, um, Nicky Marshall on Facebook. Yeah, just I'm everywhere apparently.
So don't worry about trying to write all those down, folks. I will put them in the show notes. Listen, Nikki, it's been absolutely fantastic today. Really, really fascinating conversation. And I love your story. Any final words before we close the show down for the day?
Yeah, I would say if someone's told you how it's going to be, don't accept it. Put your hands on your belly and go, does that feel right for me? And if the answer's no, then don't. You know, the things we've created, the places I've ended up, couldn't have written it if I tried. You know, if someone had said to me at 16, "Oh, you know, how's your career going to go?" I would have been bank manager by 50 or something ridiculous. So just don't accept. And even what you tell yourself, you know, challenge your thinking and go, is that right? Is that really all there is? Because there's always another way. So and if you don't think you can, then get in touch and I'll try and help you.
Challenge your thinking. I love that. Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you for watching, folks. And I'll see you again really soon. Bye now.